Welcome to the Let Them Live podcast with Emily Burning, a place for meaningful conversations, real stories, and a shared mission to protect life.
What's up, guys? Here we are back for another Let Them Live podcast. Whoop, whoop. I'm sorry if you can hear some background noise currently in the RV. This is our last day in the RV. We are packing it up for a little while until our next kind of round of Let Them Live speaking events. But yeah, it's on in the background. But today, you guys are about to have your minds blown because this guest is not like any other guest that I've ever had on this podcast. And I'm going to shake things up. We're going to shake some things up. And yeah, I'm just going to get into it. So stay on this podcast. Listen, hear it through. Please don't shut off your computer or your phone. Listen to this because I think now more than ever with this political landscape we've got going on with divisive, like just everyone is like hating everyone. It's really important to find what we have in common and like work from there. I think that may be one of the most successful strategies I've ever personally experienced with Let Them Live. And I will say it again and I'll say it in the future. Let Them Live. We do have pro-choice donors and supporters. And that's so cool to me because it shows me that Let Them Live is something that everyone wants to be a part of. Well, not everyone, but a lot of people want to be a part of and supporting women. And so today I am having Avens. You guys will get to meet Avens in just a minute. So Avens O'Brien, she's an entrepreneur and a libertarian activist, and she's based out of LA. She's on the board of Feminists for Liberty. She's appeared on Stossel defending abortion rights. She's an organizer for pro-choice libertarians. She's very much an advocate for choice in the matter of abortion, which is obviously different than me. You guys know that, but please stay around. But what Avens has said in her bio, and I know this about her, just the fact that she's pro-choice does not put her at odds with people like myself and Let Them Live who and moms who are seeking voluntary non-shaming solutions to influence choice in one direction or another. So I'm going to bring Avens in here and we're going to have an amazing discussion about just how we met and also just what we agree on and how we can see a path forward for helping women who find themselves pregnant. So let me just shut my trap like I always say and get Avens in here. Okay, what's up, Avens?
Hi, thanks for
Hi.
having me.
Of course, we made it.
Yes.
I'm just very grateful to have you on here. And like I said in the intro, like I know this is shaking things up a little bit. So definitely excited to kind of share our history with people and how we even like first met. And I think that will help to give some context to like why this is such a good idea. So do you want to tell how we kind of met? Or I mean, I'm happy to do it too, but
Well, so we both got invited. What's funny is I was trying to remember the name of it, and I felt so bad for the organizers who like did it. But there was a pro-life versus pro-choice debate basically, and as we talked, it became a conversation. That's what was really cool about it. Is like, I'm here to be like, vehemently, protecting a woman's right to choose. And you were just like, and I want them to choose life. And I was like, I don't have a problem with them choosing life. I have like, my thing is making sure they can choose. And so like, I thought that was really cool because we ended up having this great conversation about stuff we agreed with, about like, the places in which we agreed. And so it was like the nicest like chat about abortion.
It turned from like debate to like, I like literally put debate in quotes because it did. And we probably failed the organizers because they're like, this is not what we wanted. But it was awesome because we were like, oh, I agree with that. Or, I don't agree with that, but like, here's what we can agree on. And yeah, it was actually really awesome.
It was.
It kind of like breaks down the barriers because I think there's always this like us and them perspective, especially on the topic of abortion, because it is something that people are so passionate about, and rightly so. But if we can kind of like lay down our swords a little bit and have a discussion, I think that it ends up being more productive than people might think. So that's amazing. What kind of looking back on our like time that we met and we debated, but it was more of our chat, what was something that you remember that we both kind of like surprisingly saw eye to eye on that stood out to you?
So one of the things I really appreciated is like when we started talking, you brought up like the Guttmacher statistic about like what percentage of women would choose life if if their circumstances were different in terms of like, the financial needs or their support system, and that's how you created your organization. And I loved that because I was like, I do think it's really beautiful for people to choose, like if they have the means to choose something. Like I don't want people forced into making choices that they're uncomfortable with because of their circumstances. And I think that that's such a great way of looking at it. And I loved that you immediately pulled out a Guttmacher statistic, and it was this one to empower women, which I thought
Mm-hmm.
was really great. So I loved that. And then the other thing, I remember this, we talked about this and I just loved it, is that I think both of us said something about how if you want women to choose life, you need to stop like shaming single mothers.
Oh, I
And
do remember that.
that was like I like this girl. Like, that was immediately because I was like,
I love
that's
that.
the thing that drives me insane
Yeah.
about, like, a vocal percentage of pro-lifers. Like, I don't wanna, like, brush everyone with the same broad brush, because the fact is, like, I know a grand spectrum of pro-lifers, and, there are people that I'm like, "You are pro-life, you care about babies, you just, like, you have this genuine belief and you want to, like, help save them." And I respect that and I love that, and I think that's a beautiful like thing, and I want to help facilitate that within the bounds of choice. And then there's like people that that I'll call anti-choice because it feels like they just want to hurt other people, like they just want to control other people, and it sucks because I hate that, like, the people that I think are really good are judged by the worst actions, the
Mm,
most vocal actions, the most shamey, like,
yeah.
calling women terrible names on Twitter
Yeah.
and things like that. Like, I feel so
Yeah.
bad for your movement for how it's
Yeah.
represented by certain people, the same way that I feel bad about my movement and how it's represented by certain people.
That's such a good point that you brought up is like having these individual conversations are so important because it's so easy for us to make generalizations based on maybe not even our own experience, but like what the media is portraying, or
Yep.
just years and years and years of this pro-choice pro-life divide. And I
Yep.
have a lot of friends, family that are pro-choice, again, let them live, donors, supporters. You is a good example. And it's like, it's okay, you could be in the same room, it's okay, we're not gonna
Yep.
like turn to dust or melt.
Right.
We can actually have a productive conversation, but again, like you said, on both sides, that's if people are willing to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I appreciated about you as well, was just the willingness to like step out of the typical, like, again, what people generally think of pro-choice people, and
Yeah.
say, yeah, I really like what Let Them Live is doing. Yeah, I know they're a pro-life organization, but I like it. And knowing that, that's, I just thought that was really awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's
Thank you.
something I love telling people, because I think it helps to kind of like shake it up and break down
Mhm.
those barriers, which is how we're gonna move forward,
Yeah. Absolutely.
which I think is amazing. So we both literally care so much, and this is something I have learned about you. We both care about women, and I think
Yep.
that's, something that we have to understand is that everyone, I mean, okay, I'm naive. I like to think that everyone has everyone's best interest at heart. But I think that genuinely you and I can only speak to you and I, like, we both really want to support women and we care about that. And like you said,
Yeah.
not having the pressure to make a choice that they don't feel like they actually want to make because of their circumstances. So we come at it from different angles, obviously. But specifically about Let Them Live, like, what about the approach do you like specifically? I know that we obviously come from a very compassionate stance. We're not shaming women. We're not, you know, even if women end up not taking our help and having an abortion, we're going to love them. We always tell them that. We tell them that we're here to help them with post-abortive resources, whatever that looks like. So yeah, I mean, besides all that, I guess you talked about, but what about Let Them Live's approach do you like?
I mean, I think that's and it's kind of sorry if I repeat my first answer a little bit, because it is that, like, you're looking at a very specific problem and you're choosing a really interesting solution to it, which is you're not like you're looking at, why are women choosing this, and how can you help them make a different, like, will they make a different choice if you change their circumstances? And, for me as a pro-choice person, like, the worst thing that can happen in the pro-choice story is, like, for someone to regret the choice that they made. Like, that's what I don't want anyone to regret, that the choices that they make. And so, like, what I appreciate about your organization is it's recognizing that, like, some people might make a different choice if their circumstances are different. And so you want to bring that forward. You want to say, hey, here's another option. And
Yeah.
I think that's the thing that I love, is that, I mean, you're a pro-life organization, but you believe in choice, not like in the same way that I do, but in the way that, like there's an Ayn Rand line about, like, that morality ends when a gun begins. And for me, that, like, really informs my perspective on government, and the idea that, like, if you want to stop abortions, like, you're actually depriving people of a moral choice if you take away the legal abortions. But that being said, like, I know we're not going to necessarily agree there,
Yeah.
but the fact is, like, you are letting people make a moral choice by giving them more, like, capacity for that choice. And
that's a
so
good point. Yeah.
that's what I respect, is, like, you didn't say, like, I'm going to put a gun in the room and force you to make the choice I want you to make by by depriving you of that choice, and therefore depriving you of your moral agency.
Yeah.
And instead, you are saying, I think you're a moral agent and you can make this choice, and let me give you some resources. Let me give you some options. Let me be compassionate to your story. Let me not judge the fact that you are, you're feeling like you have to make this choice for whatever reason.
Yeah.
You're actually trying to empower them. And that's what I love, is that your organization, it's like, it's compassionate and it's empowering. It's empowering women to make a choice, and to make the choice that you prefer they make. I have no problem with people having a preference about what choice you make. I just don't want people shamed into or forced into making decisions. I want them to do it full, like, eyes open, fully, like, happy about it, because I don't want women to regret having abortions. I don't want women to regret having babies. I want people to, like, be able to live lives without regret,
It's so important to, like, and I think you just touched on so many good things. I wish I had my pen and paper, because I'm like, I need to write this stuff down. But coming at it, like, I think people, at least in my opinion of being a pro-lifer and having seen the arguments and where people come from being pro-life, it's not like, in order to be pro-life, you don't have to shame women. Especially, like, you don't have to, it's okay to put yourselves in their shoes, is what I'm saying, and be pro-life and say, okay, you know what? There's a single mom. Would I have made the exact same choices that she made? Maybe not. Okay. But at this point, we're here. Okay. Like, she's pregnant. And so those comments, and I bring this up all the time because it's so stupid. All the comments I see on Facebook, oh, she should have kept her legs closed. It's like, well, thank you so much, but, like, we've already we're past that. Okay. So, like, putting yourself in her shoes, and we may not have made the same decisions, whatever, but having some compassion. I've seen just, like, awful disparaging comments, like, oh, like, why is she doing that? Like, I never would have done that. I'm like, we're here. Okay. Like, let's start from here. And then it also kind of goes, and I guess this kind of goes into my next question, actually, which is perfect. But with Let Them Live, and something I think we both agree on, is it's like, you have to get to that root issue, because if you are just saying, choose life, okay, that's great, but why are you even walking into that abortion clinic in the first place? Like, that why question has been what's missing. Like, we need to be asking women, like, what is it that's the deeper rooted issue, why you're facing this decision in the first place. So my question to you, and we can definitely talk about, like, a social safety net, if you could change one thing about how our society supports women facing difficult pregnancies, what would that be?
Well, I think I think part of it is that, like, for people who are pro-life, sometimes they mention things about, like, the culture of life. They're like, we want a culture of life. And I'm like, great. Then, like, that means a culture of, like, of embracing people and and empowering them, and as I've said in my previous two answers. But I think, like, what I'd like to see, it's funny because what I'd like to see from society versus what I'd like to see from government are two different things, because I'm a
That's a
libertarian.
good point.
So,
Yeah.
like, what I want from government is I want government to get out of the way of people making decisions. And that means, like, I need government, like, and it's so funny because, as a libertarian, it means like everything, right? I want government to get out of, like various economic things like business regulation, so that people can start businesses and make jobs and make money, and, and so it's funny because every single thing is like, it's both, personal, political, the economic is personal, is that, like, when the government gets out of all of these things, from, the way that we run our businesses, the way we run our lives,
We can make way more money. We could be more prosperous.
This creates more economic opportunity, and this creates an environment in which people want to have babies. That, like, the people say, hey, I have the economic structures to be able to facilitate, bringing a child into this world. The way that the government, I realize that the left seems to think that, bringing the government in to, subsidize childcare and, all these things. I think that inherently just makes it more expensive. And the way that we regulate childcare in this country makes it less supportive of, families that might, want to create kind of like a childcare, like, little, I don't even know what to call it, but, kind of like a co-op, right?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, like it's like the government. The problem is, so many people think like, oh, the government needs to solve this by providing, childcare and providing this and providing that. And I honestly think the government needs to get out of our ways in so many ways that we don't even think of as related to children. Like, we don't even think about these being related as as family friendly policies. But the fact is, like, if the regulatory environment for starting a new business was different, people would create businesses, which would create jobs, which would create economic opportunity, which would create products and services that would benefit all of us, right?
Yes.
And, like, so it's a vast interconnected network. But the fact is, like, what I wish society would do, so then, like, government get the hell out of our way. And then what I wish society would do is then, for people in their groupings, in their churches or in their communities. And, I know secular pronatalists, like myself, that, like, I love children. I think children are wonderful. I'd like to see more of them. I'd like to see some of the, like, the most brilliant and compassionate and wonderful people that I have in my life. I hope that they have kids if they want them, but also I hope that they want them, like, and I think that as a society, being more there for people as they're, moving into that stage of their lives where they decide to have children. And on top of that, like, if we look at the fact of, like, having kids, there's obviously the cost of having kids. There's all sorts of, like, the just kind of socioeconomic expectations of having children. But there's also the fact that, like, the way that society deals with children in general and mothers in general is that, we basically kind of, children are isolated from society. We're just like, oh, get that baby out of the restaurant, get that, get that child off the airplane.
Oh my gosh, the plane. I've seen so many videos where they're like, this baby's crying. I'm like, what do you expect? I would be crying.
Right?
I would be crying too, like,
and I feel so bad because I feel like what we do is we go like, well, this child is inconvenient in the world in terms of, like, they make noise or they don't know how to behave properly. The way that children learn how to behave properly in society is by in like exposing them to society and saying, like, hey, this is a place where, you're going to sit quietly and color on your little book while while the parents are doing something. And what happens is that, like, we isolate children from adult society and from greater society, and the people who care for children are overwhelmingly mothers, right? Like, most people who are going to do most of the, like, caregiving of children are mothers. And so that means that mothers like, women get pulled out of human society in like adult society, and, like, they're busy taking care of children. And or they're doing that thing where they have to, like, worry about getting back to their job, and they don't have enough, post, what's the
maternity leave,
like. And so, but the thing is, like, so we have this environment where, like, we've made it so unpleasant in so many ways to be a member of society and also be a mother. And
that's a really
it's
good
just
point.
So unfortunate because, like, I even look at that. Like, I don't have kids yet, and I look forward to having them. I love children, but I realize, like, of course, my life will change when I have children. I won't be doing the same things that I do.
Yeah.
But there's so many things where I'm like, wow, like, this is gonna be so hard because, like, a lot of your friends stop, coming
There's
and
more
seeing you because you've got a kid now.
considerations, like
Like,
more prepping, more
yeah, like
planning.
you potentially lose out on so many things because society and your friends and all these different things aren't necessarily supportive of this thing. They're like, all right, well, let us know when the kid can walk and talk and do its, and is suddenly in a pre-adult stage, so that we can properly, like, place it in a school or place it somewhere where it's not in our way. And I
Yeah.
think that is such a thing that, like, as a society, like, we need to embrace children and we need to embrace mothers. And that way more people want to choose, like, to bring a family into this world, to make a family,
Mhm.
to bring kids into this world. And so I think it's this broader thing, but it's like,
Yeah.
as a society, if we just hate on children so much, like, we're not incentivizing people to want to make them and
Yeah.
to change their lives substantially for them.
Yeah. And this is where I'd make the argument, like, that starts in the womb, but you already know that, just for my followers listening. But this is like, I haven't had a conversation like this on the podcast yet. And I'm glad we're doing this, because I knew that you would be the only one that I could that could bring this type of perspective where, because let's go back to the government. You have people that are like, government needs to be involved in everything. Like, the government wants to tax us 100%, give us all your money and then we'll take care of the rest. Well,
Right.
the government doesn't really do a great job on a lot of things. So we
No,
can
really?
certainly agree on that. And then I think that you have people on the other side. You have Republicans that are kind of ignoring the issue, right? And maybe the solution is, they can disagree on the solution, but, like, you also can't ignore that there is a need for, like you said, people to step up, whether that's just changing how we look at single moms.
Yeah.
I used to, and I can't remember if I had shared this, but this is something I'll share. It was probably when I was in high school, before I, like, really got, going in the whole pro-life movement. But I remember that I would, if I saw a woman who was pregnant, or she had her kid with her, grocery store, wherever I was at, my eyes would immediately go to her left ring finger to see if she had a ring on. And I didn't realize until probably when I was, like, actually interacting with and helping pregnant women when I was in college, that, like, that I was doing that, and kind of perpetuating this stigma. And obviously, is it ideal? No. But the last thing that women need when they're pregnant, or they've, just had their baby and they're already struggling, is for someone to kick them down again.
Yeah.
And so I really think it's important for society, like you said, to kind of step in. Like, let's reframe how we see women and how we see children. Again, I get so annoyed when people are, like, complaining about babies crying on the plane. I'm like, just get some headphones. Like, in the grand scheme of things, you guys, like, that mom or dad who's holding that baby, who's screaming and crying, they're stressed out. I've done it. When we fostered a baby from Let Them Live, and she was screaming, crying on the plane. There was nothing I could do about it. Nothing was calming her down. And I was crying. I started crying. Like, the last thing I would have needed in that moment were people, like, being,
Yeah.
sorry, but it's true.
Yeah.
So
it's so funny too, because, like, I'm such a, like, poster girl. I mean, I'm a poster girl for, like, pro-choiceness in, like, so many ways, including, like, hey, look, I have short red hair. I'm an angry feminist who hate, like, people have a lot of assumptions about me. But one of the things that's really funny is that like, little kids, especially babies, love my hair because it's so
I bet
bright.
they do. Yeah.
And so, like, I've been on airplanes before where, like, some mother is, like, with her kid and the baby is crying. And of course, like, the air pressure, everything sucks about being on a plane when you're an adult, much less when you're a baby. And, like, and so I've had times where, like, I've been like, hey, can I just, like, and I'll look over at the little baby and I'll make silly faces, but they're totally fascinated by the hair. So it's like, and it's so cute because, like, I've managed to, like, calm down children, and people are like, oh, well, do you have kids? And I'm like, no, I like kids.
Yeah.
And, like, I think that so many times, like, if we help each other, like, there will be some adult that just has that magic, like, with the baby.
Yeah.
And like, and it doesn't always work,
Yeah.
but like, let's
Yeah,
help each
step
other.
in for each other.
Like, because if the baby stops crying, that helps me and everybody around me. So like, if my hair
helping
is
that
the entertaining
mom,
front,
like, you know, the stress. We all deal with crazy lives. Like, let's just be nice to each other.
Yeah,
Like,
like, be kind.
maybe I'm just like extra feeling this because of all like the election. I feel like anytime there's an election year, I'm just like immediately overwhelmed because it's like everyone has opinion on everything. And so I feel like I'm just more in the like, please, let's just be nice to each other.
Yeah, like,
this is why I'm not in politics.
Right? Well, and we have to live with each other after the election's over.
That's
And
true.
that's the thing that drives me absolutely insane is like, people will be like, "Oh, well, if this happens," it's just like, okay, like the worst things that any of us think are going to happen from the left or the right, like whether
Yeah.
you're a Republican who's like, "Oh my God, Kamala's going to bring communism," or like whether you're on the the left and you think that like Trump is going to turn us into the Handmaid's Tale, like these are both like insane things that aren't going to happen.
Yeah.
And like and definitely like we could put ourselves on a path towards things that are less good, but like, yeah, like we have to live with whatever's gonna, December's gonna show up and we're gonna be like, oh, so that's what happened. That was the election.
Yeah, like you
And
gotta
now,
just,
you still have to see your uncle at Christmas, even if you had the opposite political opinions. And, and obviously I understand that like we all have deep-seated beliefs about like, well, I think that your political opinion is this and it's immoral. I think as a libertarian, it's funny because like I kind of equally hate the left and the right. And so like when it comes to trying to like tolerate other people's political beliefs, like one, I have to, because like there's not enough people like me for me to just go off on an island and be with people that agree with me. But also like, it's like my political philosophy is based on a moral framework that forces wrong, and forcing people to do things is wrong. And so if that's the case, then like everybody's political philosophy, whether it's on the left or the right, is morally reprehensible to me, and yet I still have to tolerate the rest of you. So like
libertarianism is like the unicorn. It's like a it's so hard to understand. It's so funny because like it's obviously such an interesting, and this year the first libertarian I've had on here that I know of. But I think this conversation is so interesting because it's actually really refreshing to hear from someone who, it's crazy. Like, again, this kind of loops back to like you and I disagree on some pretty serious things, but there's a lot of stuff that we agree on. And hearing your perspective is refreshing because I don't think I would consider myself a libertarian, but I also, find the whole, what you just said with like, okay, the extremes on this side, the extremes on this side, like, let's all just chill out for a second. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you talked about this where after the election happens, right, we all have to still, be in the same place together.
Yep.
And, you still have to meet up with your uncle or whoever it is, who it is in your family at Thanksgiving or Christmas time. So how do we, and from your perspective, how do we, as people who have opposite opinions on very important things, how do we keep that conversation productive? How do we like keep it respectful while sharing your viewpoints? Like, there is a way to do that. Like, what are your tips and tricks? No, just kidding. How do you, as someone who clearly does respect other people's opinions and wants to like hear them out, how do you keep that conversation productive?
I mean, I think part of it is like, is I think that there's so many places where we can find little points of agreement. And so, like I want every child in the world to be loved and wanted. I don't think anyone disagrees with that. I don't think you would disagree with that. I don't think that anyone out there is like, I don't want children to be loved and wanted. Like, people want children to be loved and wanted. It's something that I care about. It's something you care about. It's something that like every pro-lifer and most like, I feel like every pro-lifer and pro-choicer, unless they're nuts, is going to believe in that. The idea that every nuts. No, and that's the thing. There are nut jobs. I'm not talking about those people. Yep. Like the fringes are the fringes. And I want to talk about that in my like later, like at some point I feel like we'll get to a point. But like but the thing is that like, we have places where we can agree. And so like, I want a world in which every child is loved and wanted. And, my solution in that way is yes, one of my solutions is for women to have abortions if they have an unwanted pregnancy that they didn't plan and that this is their preference. But there's all these other things that they can do. Like one, they can choose a different path. But two, like, for example, I really like I desperately want to make sure that people have information, education, and access to forms of birth control to prevent an unwanted pregnancy in the first place. And I know that, like, when I talk to the pro-life people, some of them will just be like, no, they shouldn't be having sex at all. Some people are going to have sex. You're just going to have to deal with it. Like,
that's kind of my perspective is like, yes, ideally in a world where, and I talk about this, obviously being a Christian, like obviously in an ideal world, there would be no sin. People wouldn't be doing things they're not supposed to be doing. But the reality of the world is that there are people. I mean, I found out I had a sister like 3 years ago that I didn't know about. And yeah, I mean, my dad, who I love very much, growing up was like, I never had sex before marriage. Don't have sex before marriage. Well, it happened. And I have a sister. And, like, obviously from my perspective, God can take anything and turn it into something beautiful. And so the reality is that we do live in a fallen world. We do exist in a society where there are people that end up having sex, and doesn't mean that it's like, depending on the perspective, right? Like, just because you recognize that something happens doesn't mean that you're saying it's okay or it's not okay or whatever. But it is important to just exist in the reality of the situation.
And being able to, like, educate people about, like, what are your chances of pregnancy at the, and how are your ways of preventing it? I mean, like, yeah, we definitely would come from different perspectives, because I don't have a moral issue with people having, premarital sex or sex. But, like, I also, I think it's good when people have sex with people that they love and that they'd like to build a life with. That's beautiful. I also think that, if even if you love someone and want to build a life with them, that doesn't mean that if you get pregnant, you just want to have a baby with them. Maybe there's circumstances that you're both in that make you not want to have a kid yet. And so the best thing, and I say this, like, is that, like, my preference altogether is, like, not having pregnancy until you're ready for it, until you're, whatever that means for you. But, like, my preference is for people to, like, have wanted pregnancies and have, planned pregnancies. And then my next preference might be, that like people who have unwanted pregnancies have abortions. But that doesn't mean that, like that place of not having unwanted pregnancies in the first place is so large, because, like, there's so many things we can do to, like, help access. And again, I don't use government for this, but the idea that we can, like, birth control pills have become cheaper and cheaper. You see, condom use, like, these things. We actually have a massively decreasing rate of teenage pregnancy in this country. The highest, the year of highest teenage pregnancy in this country was 1957. And then the year of, like, the year of peak abortions in this country was 1991. Like, things have been steadily going down because more people are educated about having sex and not having pregnancy. And so, I recognize that, obviously, like, when I'm talking to someone very religious, we're gonna have a different perspective on the whole sex thing in the first place. But the fact is, like, if people are going to have sex, like, how can we help them to not get diseases, not get, and not get in terrible situations where they get hurt, and also not create life that they don't want to have and support.
That's a really good point right there, actually, because I think that's something that a lot of people can agree on is, like, the very simple education of, like, okay, sex makes babies. So that being said, like, keep that in mind, because I think a lot of times, and again, I think this is actually something that it's just a logical piece of information that regardless of where you are politically or religiously or whatever, like, that understanding that sex has that consequence, risk, potential, whatever you want to call it, it's just biology. Like, so that's a really good, like, point to start. And I think it's something everyone can agree on that people need to know. And I think education is a really important thing. Education about it, also about, I mean, obviously we were talking about pre-pregnancy, but post-pregnancy, like, if a woman does find herself in a pregnancy, in one moment she may feel like this is unwanted, because she doesn't know that she has other options.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important. Like, I believe women should be informed. I believe women should have a full understanding. Like, before they're walking into that abortion clinic, they do need to understand that, like, there is an organization called Let Them Live, and they can help you,
Yeah.
because they may not know that. And gosh, the number of times I've had women who are older, women who are younger, who had abortions more recently, that said, I never would have had it had I known about you guys. Like, that's heartbreaking to me. And I'm sure that that's
Yeah.
heartbreaking to you as well.
Yeah. I as I said, I don't want anyone to ever regret the choices they made. And so, that's the thing, is like we can prevent pregnancy. And then after prevention there comes, how do you facilitate those choices? And so, like, who wants to choose a different path? How do we facilitate that choice?
Mm-hmm.
And so, for me, like, coming from the perspective that I come from, my, the choice is a huge circle that's over here there's abortion, and over here is reaching out to someone like Let Them Live and saying, hey, I need some help financially, or I'm in a bad place of, like, my boyfriend turned out to be abusive and now I don't think I can do this. Like, that happens. And that's the thing that drives me nuts on the single parent thing, is like, how many people maybe made a choice to have a baby, or get pregnant by somebody who turns out to be abusive. And like, I know it's something that we talk about in the abortion rights movement a lot, about, like, abortion allows women to leave, potentially abusive situations, but also, like, if they choose to stay with the child, they choose to keep a child, but now they've got this baby daddy who happens to be abusive. Like, how do we support them, and how do we not shame them for making the choice to get away from that
And how
situation?
do we, like, make sure that they're safe? Like, that's one of the biggest things that we've seen at Let Them Live, when we have had, which has sadly been a lot of women who have had come to us with, like, domestic violence situations, like
Yeah.
serious domestic violence, like, just awful. It's like, okay, in this moment, what she needs is to know that she is going to be safe, and that there's people that are going to make sure that they pull out all the stops, whether it's like legal
Yeah.
support, whether it's whatever it is, like making sure that that she's safe. And gosh, those situations are so hard. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of people, it's very easy on the outside looking in to say, oh, you should just leave. But the reality is, if you have never been in a violent situation, I've personally found myself in emotionally abusive situations where I never got physical, but it's kind of the same type of mind games where there's, you feel like you can't leave. I don't know. It's really hard to
Yeah.
describe, but it goes back to putting ourselves in women's shoes and legitimately asking them what they need in this moment. Like, do you need me to hire a lawyer so that you can get away from this guy, like a restraint? Like, what do you need?
Yeah. And I love that. I love that your approach with Let Them Live is so holistic. Like, you're looking at everything. You're not just going like, okay, how do we make this baby live? Like,
Yeah.
you're like, how do we make this woman thrive? And
Yeah.
that's such an essential thing, because, like, a baby's life will be better if their mother is thriving, if their mother has
Yeah.
educational
We want
resources, if their mother has
moms. Oh,
you
yes.
you're and that's honestly, I think that's the thing, because I mean, obviously, the pro-life, pro-choice debate, it often really comes down to, like, the pro-choicers, we're all like, well, the women's right to matter, like, the women matter, the women matter. And, like, the pro-life argument is, the baby matters, the baby matters. And, like, really, like, the place where they can come together is this place where you've kind of gone, of course the woman matters. That's how she, like, supporting the woman helps her make a different choice to support the
Mhm.
baby,
Yeah,
and
and a good
that's
mom. They wanna be good moms. Like, that's the thing.
yeah,
Like, majority of the moms that we see, I mean, maybe there's a couple that just looking for a handout, but a majority of the moms are hardworking moms that
yeah,
want to be the best mom. They just don't have the resources. They just don't
yeah,
have what we need, and that's why I'm like, anytime someone's like, "I wanna start a nonprofit and do," I'm like, "Yes, call me. Let's talk about it. I wanna help you guys be successful," because we need more of this. Like, back to the social safety support, not government, but, like, just people stepping up. Like, this is why we need nonprofits. This is why we need to pump money. Not plugging Let Them Live here, but I totally am. If you want to donate, go to letthemlive.org. But you know what I mean? Like, this is why we need more support. Um, and you put it great. Like, we can help the mom, and she's the one walking into that abortion clinic at the end of the day. She's the one carrying this baby. She matters too.
yeah. It's funny, I think about the fact too that like I don't remember if I mentioned this on the discussion that we had like back in the day, but I say this sometimes on back in the day,
It
back
feels like
whenever
forever
it
ago.
was
Whenever it
I don't
was.
even remember when it was, but
Years.
it was years. But the fact is like this is something I say in abortion discussions all the time and debates and stuff like that, is that like, and again, it comes from the libertarian perspective of like not wanting the government to do things, is that if everybody put their guns down and was like, all right, we're not gonna involve government, we're not gonna, whether or not it's like we're like, so the pro-choicers will stop like fighting for funding of
Mm-hmm.
clinics, right? And let's say that the republic the pro-life side stopped like trying to legislate on abortion, and so so let's just say that like magically like abortion's
Yeah.
legal, but like nobody's touching it from a government issue, right?
Mm,
Do you know how much money, lobbying money, is spent by both the pro-life and the pro-choice
a lot.
lobby on, on everything from, one, getting Planned Parenthood subsidies to getting, to getting crisis pregnancy centers subsidized. And like, there's all this money. There's money, 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 money. There's billions of dollars being poured
A
in
lot of money.
every year to basically point a weapon at each other. Like that's literally what it is.
Mm,
Like that, like, and
that's a
I
really good
look at
point.
government isn't a tool, it's a weapon. And so like when you vote and when you lobby and when you do these things, you're basically, for the most part, you're being like, hey, I'm going to push and push and push until the weapon is pointed at you, not at
Mm,
me. And so when that happens, we spend billions of dollars to point a weapon at each other. And if
mm,
instead that billions of dollars, if all that money that women are spending towards, Act Blue, that could instead go towards, they could spend it on Planned Parenthood if they want, whatever they want to spend it on. But the billions of dollars spent by both sides of the aisle was instead spent voluntarily supporting organizations like yours.
yeah.
And then let's say organizations like Planned Parenthood, so women have these choices, whatever, but the more, like, so much more money would go into an organization like yours
Yeah.
if that money wasn't being spent
I
on,
mean,
on trying to repoint the gun.
you don't have to ask me twice if I want, more money in my pocket and less money, going to tax dollars to do things that I don't agree with. Like, you're speaking my language right now, because the reality is like, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. And so you're right, like all this money that's poured into it. I think about this often, and Nathan and I talk about it often, but just like how much change we can make. And it's really more about like changing hearts, changing
Yeah.
minds, and having these conversations. And there's actually more that we agree on that I probably forgot about. I'm sure we had a very similar conversation years ago, but my brain like doesn't remember anything. So, but like you are really just hitting a lot of notes with me, and I think it's awesome. I think this is awesome. Like, to sit here and have this conversation and say, yeah, like we totally agree on this. Like, we actually agree on an approach that can help pregnant women, that
Yeah.
can meet them where they're at, that can like really hone in on what those deep-seated issues are. Because at the end of the day, we can't just slap on some like band-aids on and just cover up issues and hope that they're fixed. Like, it's
Yeah.
important to like really dive deep. And I know we talked a little bit about this, like generalities, that we in general, pro-lifers and pro-choicers, pro-choicers, like, think about each. But I
Sorry.
was gonna. It's fine. I'm like losing my mind over here. I need a vacation. What is one stereotype of pro-lifers that you have personally found to be true, and what is one that you have found to be untrue?
So, it's like, as I said at the beginning of this, I feel like there's a spectrum of pro-life activism, right? There's this spectrum that's like genuinely like, I want to save the babies. And then there's like a spectrum that just seems to want to hate and control women. And I hate, it's like the stereotype that I hate that like fellow pro-choicers use like, about pro-lifers is that I hate when there's that stereotype of like, they just want to control women. They just want to, they just want to like put us in our place. They want to make a Handmaid's
Mm,
Tale. I'm not going to say that there aren't like a fringe group of people in the pro-life movement that might actually find that appealing. And I want to mention that for
mhm.
a second. But like, before I get into that, like,
Yeah.
The fact is that, like, I feel like there are so many incredible pro-life activists who just, like, it's genuinely to them, it's genuinely about the baby, it's about the life, and I get it. Like, I get it intellectually, I get it, like, and so I find that, there are so many people, there's an assumption that pro-lifers are all religious, and that's not true, but it's like there
Yeah.
are a lot of religious
Yeah.
pro-lifers. And and religious pro-lifers, if they're doing it right, if they're doing it right, they're also engaged in their church and their community, and they're trying to create like a supportive system. And so
Yeah.
I think that, like, there's a stereotype that, pro-lifers are all religious. That doesn't hold out to all of them, but that definitely, if the best part of them can be that religious support that could come from, like, churches and communities and things like that, then that can be such a valuable thing. But it
Yeah.
sucks because, like, I've started spending too much time on Twitter, and I really need to stop because it's like the worst. Like, like, the dialogues on Twitter are just extra toxic. I thought Facebook was toxic, and
Oh
then
my
I hung
gosh,
out
no.
on Twitter.
No, Twitter's
But,
like
like,
zingers, just pew, 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 pew.
oh my god, but the thing that's, like, wild right now is there's, like, this new undercurrent of Twitter that I found where just, like, people are just there's just a lot of, and I don't use this term, I don't throw this term out at everybody I disagree with,
Yeah.
but, like, there's literally, like, homophobia and sexism that is just straight up, like, they clearly just hate women or they hate gay people. Like, there's a
There
place for
there
that.
are fringe groups of people, like, and again, like I've said before, like, maybe I'm just a little naive in my mind. I'm like, no one would actually think this, and I ended up found out, gosh, it was like 7 years ago or something, like, the guy I was dating was, like, actually a racist, and I was like,
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like, and he was, like, denying the Holocaust and all this crap. And that's when my mind, it's like I finally kinda saw reality where it's like, no, there are actually people that are, like, actually legitimately like
yeah.
that. So, yes, I
Yeah.
understand that, like,
And
and yeah, it
and
happens.
they
There are
don't
people.
and they shouldn't speak for a movement. They don't generally speak for a movement, but that
Right.
doesn't mean that they're not loud and obnoxious on Twitter. And it's wild because, like, I one of the things I made a post about this not too long ago, but, like, there's and again, this is a fringe, non-representative percentage of the pro-life movement, which I would actually, this is the place where I'd be like, these are anti-choicers, not pro-lifers. Like, that's where I get, like, meh, because
Neat.
there's, like, this subset, and it's, again, small and not representative of the whole crowd, but especially on Twitter, that really seems not to care about the life of the baby, but to care about punishing women for the audacity to seek pleasure through sex. And it
Mm.
it really sucks because, like, you can have whatever opinions you want on sexuality and sex before marriage or whatever else, but, like, the fact is, like, this happens a lot when somebody says, like, don't, she should have known to close her legs or whatever. But there's, like, a very, very, like, there's an undercurrent that it just wants to punish people for, like, not doing things the way that they think they should have been done.
Mm.
And you see this on the left too. Like, the left has their own version of, like, punishment culture where they're just like, how dare you be super rich, or how dare
Oh
you,
my gosh, the
or how
punishment
dare you not.
culture.
Right, like, but the thing is, like, it's one of the biggest, like, triggers for me about, like, somebody not, like, that I don't feel like has a good moral framework as a person, as a moral compass, not about, like, God or anything, but just, like, your moral compass as a person is, like, do you derive joy from the concept of punishing people? And if you derive joy from the concept of punishing people more than the idea of, like, saving a life, or restorative justice, or, or actually just, like, helping others, right?
Mm.
Or preventing harm, right? If you get off on, like, punishing people, punishing women for the audacity to have sex to have sex for pleasure, whatever, like, that, those are the things. There's, like, red flag
Yeah, you have
city
to look at
because,
what
like,
people kinda, like, focus on. It's
like, here's
honestly probably similar too to the people that are, and this is semi off topic, but I was talking to Nathan about this last night, like, I don't necessarily want Kamala to be our president. No, I'm gonna take that. I don't want Kamala to be our president. I don't agree with Kamala. That's a pretty obvious thing. Now, if Kamala does become our president, and am I gonna be one of those people that is, like, cursing her out and wishing harm? Absolutely not. You know what I'm gonna do for her? I'm gonna pray for her every single day. And I think it goes back to that. There's people that just want to, like, feel
yeah,
hateful. I don't know. It's like, it's okay if things aren't going our way, like, it's okay to pray for your enemies. In fact, if you are religious, like, that's in the Bible. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's okay to not just hate people.
Yeah, I mean, and it's wild because I mean, as I'm a very vocal person, especially on Twitter and Facebook and everything about, my pro-choice activism. And I mean, I've been called a lot of things. I mean, I don't know if you swear on your podcast, but like, I mean, like
Go
literally,
for
like
it.
I had a dude calling me a baby slaying cunt. Like this is like these are things that have been thrown at me,
And
and like,
I don't
and it's
like that. I don't it does not get you anywhere. And this is
right.
for pro-life people, pro-choice people, white, black, whatever, male, female, it doesn't matter. People in general, like, you should not be talking to other people like that. You can disagree with them. You can think that they are the most awful person in the world, but like, it's okay to have decorum when you talk to
Yeah.
people. It's okay to not call names.
Well, and that's the wildest thing. So I ended up like making a tweet about like the fact that like I was like, look, I recognize that like pro-lifers look at me and they're just like, you dehumanize this unborn child. Like there are
Mhm.
all sorts of things that
Just
like
write
I
you
can be
off.
rightfully accused of, right? Like I have dehumanized this unborn child, blah, 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 blah. I have never referred to a child as punishment. Never in my life.
Mm.
I have never referred to a child as punishment. And I see, and again, not representative of the whole pro-life movement, but there's this subset that absolutely does. That it's not about a baby. It's about punishing somebody. And that's so fucked up. Like like for it's so cruel, it's so hurtful, and it's so ironic because I will be called all the time. I will be called out for dehumanizing an unborn life, and yet I have never in my life ever considered a child to be a punishment.
Mhm. Mhm.
And like I just like it's like
Yeah.
I know that people like that that's not you, those are not your allies. And like
Yeah.
and it's like the same way that like I don't think that women need to be ashamed of having abortions in any way. And so on one hand I'm glad that people are talking about their experiences more, but I also don't think people need to be like, "Oh yeah, got my abortion today." Like that's not, I mean, most people
That
don't do that
that's what I
anyway,
was
but
gonna
that's
ask you, because it feels like lately I've seen more of this, and you can talk probably more on this as well, but just like anything, it seems like the needle is moving further and further, like, towards some extremes where I've been seeing people, like, documenting their abortion experience. They're like, "Yeah, woo, I just look like, I have my little fetus in a plastic bag," like, having abortion party, like, it's so exciting, and they're like, "I love abortion," like, it's just like, it's like, "Really, guys? Come on." Like, the people that are kinda on the more extremes of both pro-life and pro-choice,
yeah.
it's like they're ruining it for us.
Yeah.
We're trying to make some progress here. We're trying to, like, find common ground, and it's like then you have someone, like, saying, "Yeah, abortion, woo," or like, "This woman needs to go to prison for the rest of her life." It's like, you guys, it yeah,
Yeah.
not to go on a
That's
diatribe, but yes, you
yeah,
bring up
but
great points.
that's the thing is like and I'm like an abort like I've paid for numerous abortions. I've had an abortion myself. Like I'm not ashamed of that in any way. And I don't like I don't volunteer that information. Like I'm not gonna be like, as a woman who's had an abortion, let me put this like I would not do that. Like like I made a personal choice in my life for what was like the time and place for me. And I have no regrets about it. I have no shame about it. But also, like, I would have much rather not have gotten pregnant in the first place. And like, I would much rather have not had to undergo like, the hormonal changes that happen during pregnancy and then combined with like then having to, take some pills that then like flush out. Like I have an experience. I'm not ashamed of it. I don't regret it. But like I also don't need to like shout it out to the world.
Yeah.
I will what's the word? Like I'll advocate for it in terms of like I will express my experience, and I think that people should be willing to do that. Like I mean people, how do I phrase this? I'm willing to do that. I don't think that anyone is under any obligation to share their story if they don't want to. But I also don't need to be like, woohoo, so like this date is the date I had my abortion. Like I'm not throwing a party.
Yeah.
Like it was
I
like I
think
took some
that's
pills and
important.
it was
Like,
painful and it was sucky. Like it's not a fun experience
that's
and nobody
important for
needs
people to
ugh,
hear, because I think on our side, we think that everyone is just celebrating abortion, which there are people that are, okay? But there are also people that, are not, like not everyone is extreme. And my hope is just to like get people to kind of like you said, maybe put down the guns, like just chill out a second and realize that majority of the people, well, maybe not a majority. I don't know the statistics. I hope people are like us, but a lot of people are not falling into that category of just like being nuts. I don't know what else to call it. But do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, and the thing is, like, I don't think that either of us has a particularly like radical or extreme view. Like, I think that like the general like public dialogue on politics in general, and and this specific topic, but just politics in general, and culture in general, I feel like there's just like a really large minority that is just completely not spoken for, and that is a large majority that is completely unrepresented. Sorry, that's what
Yeah.
I meant to say.
No,
And
100% 'cause we don't have the loudest voices sometimes.
and
Sometimes it's
ironically,
Planned Parenthood at the DNC, right? And then it's like, "We love abortions," or whatever their sign said,
right.
right? It's like that has the loudest presence.
And
Not
like it's just the thing is, it's like I think that the majority of people have, and it's I don't even want to call it like a centrist view, because I feel like it's something better. That I hate the term centrism, because it sometimes just sounds like it's going to be the worst of the Democrats and the Republicans together. But like I feel like there's a reasonable view, and that reasonable view is like to like celebrate a culture in which hopefully we are able to like facilitate a world in which every child is loved and wanted and chosen, and like, and that's great. And so how do you make that world? And I make that world one way, you make that world a different way, but like let's work together on the places where it comes together. And I feel like most people are actually there, but they're absolutely not represented, and voices of nuance and voices of balance and voices of just like reasonableness are just out, like they're just
yeah.
outshouted by people who want to be extreme. And so like, that's the thing, is that whole shout your abortion movement, and that whole like, like I'm grateful for my abortion, blah blah blah, like that, that came, like it's like these two groups are just responding to each other constantly. So
Mm,
it's like, get back in the kitchen, make me a sandwich, like, shout my abortion, all that stuff is just like everybody just kind of like, everyone's gotten more crass, everyone's gotten more crude, everyone's
yeah.
gotten more extreme, because they need to prove that they're cooler than the other person, and like they're unaffected, they're just screw, fuck you, whatever. And it's just like, it's so shitty on our public dialogue, it's so polarizing, and it's
Yeah.
so rough, because
Yeah.
there's so many people being trampled on like on just reasonableness. And it just, I don't know, I
Yeah.
feel
I
like,
mean, I'm sure people that are, pro-choice that are maybe more, like you said, more extreme on your side are probably like, "What is this girl talking about? Like, this is ridiculous." And same thing with me. I'm sure there's people that are like pissed that I'm not, out here calling women murderers. But I'm not going to. That's just the fact, or whatever it is.
yeah.
And I think it's important that we take a step back to have these conversations, which does lead me into my next question, which is my last question. But coming from this different perspective, like what would be your advice that you would give to pro-lifers on anything? Just honestly, whatever. Like what would be your perspective, your advice, your opinion that you would give to pro-lifers to maybe help us make I don't I don't know what I was thinking, like make
Honestly, what would Emily do? Is it because honestly, like the thing is that like the way that you go about things with compassion. You go about things trying to like understand where people are coming from, and where and like and just kind of like walk a mile in their shoes, figure out what they need to make the choices that you want them to make. It's incentivizing, etc. These are, I think that like my advice to the pro-life movement, I mean, I'm not going to be like, oh, you have to call out these
Mhm.
terrible crappy people. I would love it if people did, but both sides are really crappy at that. And like I don't require that somebody, you know uh
Basically everyone sucks is what you're saying. No, I'm
yeah,
just kidding.
like, yes. So, like, but the thing is, like, I don't require that you call out the bad sides of your movement in order to like do good things in your movement. But I think that like leading with compassion, leading with like this idea of like, you want to prioritize women and babies. You want to prioritize like the human experience and life, and life being not just, that baby when it's born, but like its whole life and its mother's life. That, like, what you're doing is the way that the pro-life movement should be doing things. And so my advice to pro-lifers is like, what would Emily do? Is like, that's the kind of like
Whoa,
the
okay.
thing I like. If you're gonna do it that way, like, I mean, I would like the pro-life movement in general to get off the gun, like, as in terms of like using the government to force people to do things one way or the other. I know that's not advice that most of them are going to take, but in the meantime, like, if you're not going to do that, then what I really want to see is a world in which people are compassionate and facilitate and incentivize people to make good choices through positive things, not negative things, not shaming and hatred and punishment, but just saying like, hey, how can we help you? And that's really what it's about. It's about like finding the helpers, finding the people that want to make good results.
Mic drop. Literally. That's amazing. I'm grateful to hear that. I'm grateful that we did this, and I'm grateful that people are going to hear from you, because I think it is important. It is important. And I actually would like to have more conversations with you, and it would be really cool just to talk and I don't know, talk about abortion and current events. Like, I even wanted to maybe I will just ask you, since we're here right now, like, what do you think about Roe v. Wade falling? Like, what do you think about the Dobbs decision? I'm very curious because, from my perspective, it's kind of goes back to the whole like politics doesn't do a whole lot, in my opinion. Like, Roe v. Wade was gone and abortions are up, and I'm just interested to hear what your hot take is on
I
that.
mean, Roe v. Wade was a weird situation because, for like, on one hand, as a libertarian, I don't believe in federalizing issues, but also like
Yeah.
and I honestly think Roe v. Wade was probably badly argued in terms of like it being sustainable legislation. But the thing that I liked about Roe v. Wade is, I'm going to say, like, the thing that I thought was important about Roe v. Wade is that Roe v. Wade, from the perspective of like somebody that believes very much in like in the rights of individuals to make the choices that they make about their lives, is that Roe v. Wade actually basically just assured that like the government would stay the hell out of people's reproductive decisions in the first trimester. That's actually like what it actually said, was like the first trimester is all your own business. And the second trimester, states can make certain reasonable restrictions to, facilitate that incoming life. And then by the third, technically Roe v. Wade allowed states. Basically what Roe v. Wade basically said is like the states are allowed to do this. And what the states are allowed to do is interfere in the third trimester, interfere with conditions in the second trimester, and not interfere in the first trimester. And I actually, like, personally, I felt like that was a compromise that I think I felt like most people could come to, that like that most people could say, like at this very early stage, we can compromise, and we can say, you shouldn't have any involvement, that like, I mean, as it stands technologically right now, I mean, women can have abortions up to 9 weeks using a pill, which is a completely different visual than this idea that, we have of people like surgically removing babies, and like it's a different thing. And I know that the distinction doesn't matter to people who like look at the thing from the very beginning as a baby, but like but for most practical people, there is a distinction between like an abortion at 8 weeks and an abortion at 28 weeks. You know what I mean? Like, most normal, rational people recognize that there's a difference between those two things. What that difference is gonna vary, but and so when it came down to it, it's like I felt like it was gonna happen, but I hate that it happened, because I feel like I don't like the way that certain states are now, coming into like the way that you're seeing, like, and I mean, obviously, like, I'm in the pro-choice like news network, so I get all the horror stories of, oh, this 10-year-old rape victim was, required to carry her child. You know what I mean? Like it's awful. And so the thing is, like, I don't think the government can solve these problems for people. And so what I liked about Roe v. Wade is that it protected people from government interference in a very, very personal decision. And by losing that, you see different states doing different things. And I'm all about this idea that like every state has this ability to, kind of like test the waters on things. Like, so like long before we had Obamacare, like Massachusetts was doing their own version of universal health care, which
Yes.
nobody else did. Like, and and Vermont legalized gay marriage before everybody else. Like, I actually like the idea that every state is a little experiment of, hey, what works. And California had medicinal marijuana before everybody else. Like, these are just beautiful things. But when it comes to like restricting abortion rights, you see that different states are doing it differently, and some of them are tremendously oppressive towards women, and I like and towards people trying to make choices while having to like consider medical decisions, and consider like medical risks and things like that. And I know that people go, oh well, I looked into this case and I feel like this person should, like didn't have a medical cause for an abortion. The fact is, every single case is an individual case, and the people who are best informed to make those decisions are going to be doctors and women and their families. And it really scares me to basically like to decide on a government level of any kind, like where, how to legislate on somebody, how to pry into their really personal decisions, and one, restrict their ability to get certain medications or procedures, which many of which are used both for miscarriages and for abortions. And so it's a complex thing. And
Yeah, I
obviously we do
know.
an
That's
entire
like,
podcast on
I
this.
know, and we should, because I feel like I like there's just so many things that we could talk about. I mean, we could have our own podcast, Avens. It's like literally us just talking about issues and be like, oh, yeah, well, what about this and what about that?
Life and choice with Avens and
Literally,
Emily.
honestly, there we go. Because we could, and like challenge each other's ideas, and like all these nuanced things. Like, someone's like, are you excited that Roe v. Wade is gone? I'm like, there's more abortions, but like, yes, but no, I don't know. It's like, it's all very complex. But it's a good thing to have these conversations. People freak out and shy away from talking about this. Like, if you are confident in what you believe, you're not worried about having someone challenge your beliefs. You're not worried about someone sharing their opinion. And that's what we need more of. And I'm glad that you shared that. I get how, like, it's like abortion is just like freaking crazy issue, because it's like politics, society, culture, what do we do with all this stuff? So, we obviously didn't solve the world's problems on this podcast like I had wanted. No, I'm just kidding.
Right. But you know what I hate though is okay, this is gonna be really ironic, because as a libertarian, of course, I hate Democrats, I hate Republicans. I mean, like I love everybody.
I'm not
but I
registered
hate,
as either. I'm
like,
just independent or whatever.
like, and when I say I hate Republicans and Democrats, like I love lots of people that have those labels, but I really, really hate their politicians. I really hate all of their politicians. Like there are very few politicians that I don't hate. But and hate is being, it's it's a throwaway word there. Like, I mean, I hope that they change their ways, kind of, but like I don't pray for people as a non-religious person, but if in that way I pray for them to be different. But
don't worry, we got prayers enough for them.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not worried about it. But the thing, the worst part of losing Roe v. Wade, besides the way that some women in certain states are now dealing with that consequence. The other thing, which is just super petty, is that just like Republicans and Democrats have used abortion as a wedge issue for so long.
It's
and
true.
So now it's like, oh God, like now the Democrats are just rallying over this. And and I just I don't like empowering Democrats. I don't like empowering Republicans. So I just look at it and it's like, Roe v. Wade gets, gets crushed, and then everyone's like, we have to have a blue wave, and I'm like, no, I don't want any waves of you people.
Yeah, we just don't need waves. Like, let's all just not do that. Can we just skip? Can we just sit this one out? Can we just
And they do it to each other. Like the Republicans do something, so the Democrats react, and so just everybody just becomes more terrible. And it's like that meme. What's that meme? It's I don't remember what it's from. It's like American Dad or like one of those things. It's just like, children, you're both awful. Like it's like that's how I feel about Democrats and Republicans.
I do too.
it's just like, if we stopped like using government to enforce our beliefs, and instead just like embraced people and like and tried to help them make different choices, like it would just be like it'd be so much better economically, it'd be so much better socially, it'd be so much better. And we just wouldn't have people who are then, I have to punish the Republicans for the Roe v. Wade situation. I have to punish the Democrats for gay marriage. Like I just, ugh.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Look, Avens, Emily 2024. We are running on a ticket. Just kidding. It is like, I actually really like the idea of us talking more about this, because it's, this whole thing is a mess, and abortion has got to be talked about in a different way. We got to switch things up. Like, we got to get out of the old school, old style way of talking about abortion. Like, we have to actually just like take it out of politics for a second, which is, I mean, Roe v. Wade, I don't know. I have many thoughts on it, like I said, but we have to take the conversation further than just legislation and lobbying, like you said. With all that money and lobbying, we have to take it further than that. And we will, because I think that you and I are going to definitely have to talk about this more. Like,
I'm down.
This conversation is going to go on. Actually, I think we could have a really fun time. Uncensored.
Until the time that we find that one place we're like, oh, no, you believe that. No.
Well, the best thing is, when you have someone that that disagrees with you on a really important issue, like abortion, for example, you can say, like, I really don't understand why you believe that. And this is what I believe, and you can still be friends. I think that's the important thing. I think that people automatically think that you're enemies if you disagree on something. But if you both have the same mentality that, like, Avens, you're not an evil person. I do not believe you to be an evil person. I disagree with you, but there's a lot I agree with you on. And like I said before we hit record, there's like a Reagan quote, if you, I'm going to butcher it, but it's like 80%, you agree on something, 20% you don't. They're not 20% your enemy, they're 80% your friend.
Yeah.
I just really believe in that. And so I think that we should continue this conversation. And I'm grateful, but I wanted to ask you before we hop off, if there's anything else that you want to share with people that hopefully are still listening and haven't ditched us yet.
About this issue in general, or
honestly, anything, I guess. Whatever's on your mind.
No, honestly, I think we covered so many good things. I had made little notes of like things I want to make sure I say. And what's funny is a while back I was on like John Stossel's show to talk about Roe v. Wade, and I made some notes about things I wanted to mention, and then I didn't, and I was like, no, I forgot that. But like, it's John Stossel, like I'm not gonna get to be like, right, can I add a thing? Anyway, so I appreciate this, except that I wrote all my notes down so I wouldn't forget anything that's important to say. But no, I think that the thing that I leave everybody with is I think we need a kinder approach to all political issues, because I think it's the reason that I'm a libertarian, and not to let me plug libertarianism for a second. But the fact is, the reason that I'm a libertarian is because I believe it's the most compassionate philosophy in the world, which is not what most people think of when they think of libertarianism. They think of they want low taxes and no gun restrictions and whatever. Like people have all sorts of pictures in their head about what libertarians are. But for me, I believe that libertarianism for me is this compassionate philosophy that respects the rights of every single individual, and so people should have the freedom to flourish or to fail by their own merits, and not by the government putting the thumbs down.
Survival of the fittest.
Well, but here's the thing is that if you live in a world in which, you're able to make the decisions that you make, you can choose what to put in your body. So you can choose to smoke marijuana, or you can choose to, make a contract about your employment that other people might not make, et cetera. All the choices in the world that you decide to make, if you are not isolated from the consequences of those choices, if this was a bad idea and you didn't make enough money, or this is, or whatever, if you're not isolated from the consequences of those choices, you can make better choices faster. And so people become learning machines, and they're able to learn and change and evolve and make better decisions for their lives, because they're the buck stops here. The person that's responsible for the choices they made is them. And so the person who's
Yeah.
responsible, who gets to basically enjoy the wins and the losses from enjoy the wins and suffer the losses of their choices, is themselves, right? And so if the government stops, like putting the thumb on the scales for any of us on any choice that we make, whether it's, a bank and their mortgage practices or a person and their decision to, smoke marijuana or take mushrooms or whatever, like that, if we're able to make the choices that we want to make about our lives, then we get to dictate our lives, and we get to dictate them for good or bad. And then, and no one else is responsible for that. And that enables us to, and then we can have a community which helps each other when we make bad decisions, but we can say, hey, bro, you made a bad decision, but let me help you out.
Yeah, that was gonna be my next question.
Because that's the thing, is in the same way that, like, you might think that having premarital sex is a bad decision, and then it ends in a pregnancy, and you don't want to punish somebody for that pregnancy, so you go, hey, like, let me help you with, with like support you in becoming a mother. Like, that's a valid combination of those things, where you, like, that person isn't isolated from the consequences of their decision, but you also support them in making the decisions
It's
that you
like
want.
with my 18-year-old sister-in-law, I would have the conversation like, okay, sex outside of marriage is a great example. Like, okay, I messed that one up. I did. Many times, not good. Okay, so I would have the conversation with her like, hey, here's my experience. I wish I had done it differently, but I also don't. It's weird because I fall into like, looking back, like, yeah, now I would have made a different decision, but I also know that I am where I am because,
of the decisions you made.
yeah, because like God can work through anything. But I would tell her, I'm like, and this is the same thing we tell our moms, like, I can't physically force you to do something or not do something. All I can do is tell you what I can help you with and give you every opportunity. But at the end of the day, like, you can take what I say or leave it. So what if I'm telling my sister-in-law, like, hey, here's my experience, like, this is why I think this. You're an adult, like, you can take it or leave it. I may not be
Yep.
like excited about that, but I'm gonna love you.
Yeah.
I will help you if you find out that you did something and you regret it and you don't feel good about it. Like, of course you can come talk to me, but like, I can't make decisions for you. And I feel like that's where people. This is why we should have a podcast, because this is such an interesting discussion of life choices, because it doesn't mean that you don't care about the choices that people make or that all choices are equal.
Right.
I don't think all choices are equal, but this is why we should do this, because this is actually a really important discussion, and I could talk about this forever, but it is like, gosh, it's like a mind tangle about choices and responsibility and personal responsibility, and do we take responsibility for other people? Do we, like, where that line is? And you got my mind all in knots, Avens.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, I want to make the most voluntary world possible, where people can choose the things that they want to do, and others can choose whether or not to involve themselves with that. When people, you
That
say, well,
sounds like anarchy.
right. But that's like, okay, but I want to live in the most voluntary world possible. Now, at some point, there's this argument against anarchy with this idea that, like, oh, well, wouldn't you get, like, warlords who take over, one,
Mad Max
and
style.
but like, right. But the fact is, like, but force isn't voluntary. So if the most voluntary world possible, whether that's the littlest government or no government at all, who knows? Like, we would, like, let's that's a thought experiment that we could, that people
Go
have,
down the
like,
rabbit
debated
hole.
on podcasts for years. But the fact is, like, I want to live in the most voluntary world we possibly can. And whether that means that, like, we
Interesting.
but if you think about it, like, I want people to be able to make decisions
I can
voluntarily. Now,
understand that, especially like from a Christian worldview. Like the beauty of from my perspective, again, being a Christian, is that I get to choose to have a relationship with God, and free will comes from that. Now, that being said, just because we have free will doesn't I mean, I don't think, again, I'll say this, like, I don't think all choices are equal. I don't think that morally, like, some choices are equal. Like, if someone wakes up and they're like, you know what? I feel like a nice hot cup of coffee this morning and like murdering someone. Like, no. Like, do you have the choice to make that decision? Yeah. Like, I guess you can do that. Doesn't mean that it's like a good decision. But the beauty of having free will in terms of like my faith, for example, is like it's not love if it's forced, right? Like if Nathan was like paid to be married to me or something, like how awful would that feel? He's married to me because he wants to be.
Yeah.
Right, Nathan? No, just kidding. And vice versa. And because we both have chosen each other. And so I think it's such an interesting choice. Choice is such an interesting word. It's such an interesting conversation to have because I think people freak out at it because it has been so like politicized. But it's actually, free will is a beautiful thing. Now, yeah, what we do with it and our personal responsibility for the actions that we, do is another question.
Well, it's also that line too but they say like the freedom to swing your fist stops where my body begins, right? So like you have the freedom to do all these things until one of them hurts me. So you have the freedom to like shoot guns off in your backyard at targets, but if you hit my dog or you hit me, like your freedom is ended there. Like that's not okay, right?
And but you already know where my brain is going in terms of abortion. This is why we need to have
I know. But so the idea is like, as I said, like living in the most voluntary world possible. That doesn't mean that like that you can wake up in the morning, drink your coffee, and become an axe murderer. That does because you're like there's a whole volunteer thing of somebody else. Now, when it comes to abortion, we like that would have to be an entire other podcast because the fact is we're talking about something that like exists inside somebody else and consent. And so let's get into that in a completely different podcast where it's not going to take 2 fucking hours.
I love it.
But the fact is, like, as a libertarian, I want to live in the most voluntary world possible. And how I make that is by like reducing the ways in which our decisions like necessarily force others, right? And so by being able to like make our own decisions and then be like, oh, that was a bad decision. Well, at least I didn't hurt anybody while I made it. Like, that like those
because it does have more impact if it is like again, I'm always going to come from this like Christian perspective, but you could probably make a sort of like secular comparison, but it's like we don't sin in a bubble. Like you don't sin in a vacuum. Like the things that we do impact other people.
Yeah.
For the most part. I mean, somewhere down the line, like I feel like things have ripple effects, but I keep going off in like down many rabbit holes. Thank you. Just kidding. But it's so true. Like, it's just interesting. I don't know.
Like, I mean, it's funny because my biggest political issue, if everyone assumes it's abortion, and it is to some degree, but my biggest political issue is the drug war. I think the drug war is like a terrible travesty, and I think that people should have the right to put things in their bodies, even
so
if
many
you don't
people
agree
are
with
in
it.
Prison for like nonviolent drug crimes, which is.
And it's terrible. But like to me, it's like the drug war is such a much bigger issue than like, okay, I want the right to smoke marijuana. Like the drug war is all these other things. It's empowered state agencies that create a surveillance apparatus that harms us. It's the fact that like in order to oppose the production of cocaine in countries, like the CIA has literally toppled functional governments and replaced them with other governments in South America, which creates huge corruption cartels and an immigration crisis. Like the drug war impacts a million things. It impacts our foreign policy. It impacts our immigration policy. It impacts our economy. It increases crime. It like prohibition in general. Like prohibition of alcohol increased
it's like don't drink alcohol. It's like well.
Right, like
people
and
still
so that
did.
But you know what's really funny, by the way, is that like it's not funny at all, but like the government literally put poison in alcohol that was then distributed to people to kill people, to make them fear which is why it doesn't. I don't put it past the government to not be sticking fentanyl in drugs in order to make people fear buying drugs. Like, like I'm not trying to be conspiratorial about it, but
I understand what you're saying.
The point is that like my biggest issue is the drug wars. I think the drug war is an expensive, terrible, immoral thing
Yeah.
that's happened to this country, and it's destroyed families, it's destroyed communities, it's destroyed people's livelihood, it's wrecked our economy, our, our neighbors, and it's an awful thing. And what's funny is I tie it into abortion because I don't believe that the government should be restricting access to medications, and that includes abortion medication. But so I actually do tie it into that, because I think that when you prohibit things, you make them more dangerous and you make them more of a problem.
Interesting perspective.
But so there's that. But I mean, as you said, Roe v. Wade happened, and then people had more abortions. Why? People are now having more potentially dangerous abortions. People
There's
are
something
having
to say about it. Numbers don't lie, so it's
yeah. And
still a
people
problem.
are having them later because they're having to go, they're having to then, jump through hoops to get them. This is all stuff that's concerning, just from a point of prohibition, right? And so anyway, the reason I'm getting into this is the fact that is that, yes, I might be, if my neighbor takes up a heroin addiction, that can affect me, right? That can affect me because they could stop going to work, and they could start having
For
a
so
terrible
many
life
reasons.
that screws up their lives and starts to, leak into my life as their neighbor, right? But that being said, though, people's fundamental right to decide their own, their own journey and their own thing. And also the fact that nobody's life was ever improved by going into a jail cell instead of a rehab. You know what I mean? No, and so anyway, the point is that when I look at politics, and when I look at politics, when I look at just a civil society and public policy in general, is I'm trying to think of the ways in which we do the least amount of harm. And one of the biggest harms in the world has been government for those unintended consequences. And we see it specifically in the drug war. That's why it's such a big thing for me, because it's very obvious. Once you start to realize that it affects our immigration, it affects our economics, it affects our families. It means that there's countless fathers in jail instead of with their kids.
Yeah,
which
it
is
has
something-
it has very far. I mean, it's so interesting. It has so many far-reaching consequences that you wouldn't think of.
Right.
So,
And so
yeah,
people think of it and they're like, oh yeah, you just want the right to smoke pot or whatever. And it's no, this is a complicated issue. And I do think that, if we legislate on abortion, if we legislate on, on how people run businesses, if we legislate on all of these different parts of our lives, the more that we involve government, the more that we remove people from recognizing these unintended consequences that just bubble and ripple and continue, and then they're way out of our control. We can't solve these problems because they're so far removed, and so we need government to solve them. And
I could also
that's
make
no
the
good.
same. It's a different argument, but for the same purpose, I guess. It's that again, coming from a Christian perspective, it's why would I rely on a government to tell me what is right or wrong?
Yeah.
I personally answer to a higher power. So to me, the
Right.
government is yeah, I'm not gonna be oh well, the government says that it's okay to, go out and do a purge. No, okay,
Yeah.
just watch the purge. So sorry about that reference. But I'm not gonna wait for the government to go wishy-washy and say, oh well, this is not okay. Oh, we're prohibiting alcohol, or we're not. Okay, it's okay to have slaves. No, it's not. It's my
Yeah.
moral compass will not be moved based on whether the government says something is okay or not. And I
Exactly.
think
Morality is not legality. Or
that's
legality is not morality.
something that a lot of people have to understand as well.
Yeah.
So,
No, and that's the biggest thing is legality is not morality. I mean, once upon a time it was
put that
legal
on a
to
shirt.
own slaves.
Yeah.
Once upon a time it was legal to own slaves. That didn't mean that it was a
No.
moral
Just 'cause
morally
it's
good to own
legal
slaves.
doesn't make it okay.
Right. And that's how I feel about I mean, I don't have a moral issue with abortion. Obviously a ton of people do. You do. And that's
I
totally, I
do.
respect that. I
I
respect
do. I
that. I
do. I do.
actually respect that. Right. But but the fact is whether or not it's legal doesn't change your moral perspective on it. Like,
It's a
and
good
that's
point.
to me, the it's always very, it's a cliche, but we're always oh, if you don't want an abortion, don't have an abortion. If you don't want a gay marriage, don't have one. But the fact is, like, if you're relying on the government to make your moral choices for you, God, you're going to get into some really
That's
bad
something we
places.
that's something we can 1,000% agree on, okay? Like, if you're relying on the government to make your moral decisions for you, if you're relying on the government to tell you, like, what's right or wrong, like, we're all screwed.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
what a great note to end on. What is seriously though, I know this went like way long.
I'm fine with that.
But I'm so grateful, and I think we need to have more conversations. So we will. We're gonna make it happen. And yeah, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for sharing, for being open, for like, I hope helping people to see that, you know, some pro-choice people are reasonable and you can have a conversation with them. We can
And
actually like
when I share this to my friends, I'm gonna be like, some pro-life people are reasonable. We should talk to them.
be like,
Like, you know, it's so funny because it's literally going to be the exact same thing. You're going to be like, okay, guys, this pro-choicer isn't crazy. And then I'm going to be like, guys, Emily, okay, this pro-lifer isn't crazy.
like, just hear us out. We're going to be like these crazy two people going out into the world. Like, please just hear us out. Yeah, we are literally. It's like, do we belong together? Well, society would say no, but we do. But it's like, it's good. Yeah. Like, we have to convince people, like, just hang on a second. Just like hitch. We just come on board and join us for this ride, because it could actually be really good. So thank you. I appreciate it. Yes. Okay, you guys. Thanks for sticking around. And yeah, I'll keep you updated if Avens and I maybe start a podcast. So we shall see. But thank you. And we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for tuning in to the Let Them Live podcast with Emily Burning. If you enjoyed this episode, please let us know your thoughts in the comments and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.